Good afternoon and welcome to the Cybersecurity Studio. I'm your host, John Dittmer. Today is Thursday, July 16th, 2020. And today's topic is part two of how to become a cybersecurity professional. And this part I'm dedicating towards background investigations and security clearances. Why? Because it doesn't matter if you're working in purely the commercial world, you're still going to be working with sensitive information for your client or your employer. Sometimes the employers or clients have sensitive information such as proprietary trade secrets, the secret sauce for a restaurant or something like that, or could be working if in the healthcare field. They have to protect the information of patients. So there's a lot of reasons, even in the commercial world, they have to do a background check on you. All right. On the government side, of course, you have a lot more stringent requirements, especially when you start dealing in the DoD, defense community, or the intelligence community. Yeah, a lot of times you're working with classified stuff, and it's protected by federal law. You know, if you do an unauthorized authorization, they can literally throw you to jail over it. So, in the process, doesn't matter if it's commercial or government, there's going to be some kind of vetting process or a background check. So I want to talk a little bit about that. Let's start with the commercial side because that's usually pretty straightforward. If you're working for let's say a purely commercial, no government involved, no classified information, you're there to protect the proprietary information of your employer or your clients. They're usually going to run a background check. They might hire out a company or have their own internal investigators. Well, what they'll do is they'll run a check, make sure that you are who you are, not John Denver, the sneaky cyber guy. I know, I'm making a pun on myself. But I was just kind of using me as an example because I've kind of been through the whole gambit. So what they'll do is that if they're looking at hiring you, they'll run some checks. They'll check, like, for example, your credentials, your education, your degrees, and basically you are who you say you are. All right, now let's add a couple of layers to that. Now that you might end up working on a federal job or a federal contract, and you might be working with some sensitive information. It may not be classified yet, but there's almost everything the government does requires some kind of security, some type of sensitive information. Even if you're just doing purely clerical work and you're working with people's social security numbers, then you're talking about Privacy Act type of information. Okay, so they want to make sure that you are who you are and you're credentialed and you have the, you're not some fraudster out there who's been convicted 20 times for, stealing people's information or anything like that. So what they might do is they might run a background check for positions of public trust. You might hear that a lot. And part of that might include running a national agency check where you fill out a form, and then what they'll do is they might run your fingerprints depending on how sensitive the position is. They'll do a national agency check where they might check with government agencies such as the FBI and other law enforcement. They run it through, make sure that you are who you are and you're safe. They trust you to work with that sensitive information. Now, let's say you're going to be running and working on the classified level, and in either DoD or the intelligence community or so on. And it isn't just those two. It isn't just those communities. Like you have Department of Energy. They also work with classified information since we start dealing with nuclear stuff. So it becomes a little bit more involved process. Now, let's talk about security clearances real quick. In order to have access to classified information, you have to have a background check, which becomes the basis for your security clearance, plus a need to know. And then there's some other things like you'll have to fill out a non-disclosure agreement. You have to basically say, the agency that you're working with, either as a government person or as a government contractor, first of all, they have to vet you, and then also you have to make a commitment to keeping those secrets safe. Okay, so let's talk about security clearances for a little bit here. Normally at the classified level, there's about 3 different levels. So let's talk about those real quick. First level is confidential, And officially, this type of information is a security clearance that provides access to information that may cause damage to national security if disclosed without authorization. Normally, if you just have a confidential clearance, not many people have it, but it must be reinvestigated every 15 years. There's a theory that they need a continuous process of vetting who you are. Next is secret. That is a type of security clearance that provides access to information that may cause serious damage to national security if disclosed without authorization. It must be reinvestigated every 10 years. Now, the reason why I'm using this formal language because there's a lot of legalities involved, and I just want to make sure I have this right. Now, for the most part, in reality and experience, I'm talking from my experience and what I've seen. The views presented in this commentary on this video are my own. They don't represent my employer or any of my clients. This is John Dever talking from his training, his years of experience, and so this is what I want to bring up. So like in this case, what I'm bringing up is the fact that you most likely will never see people with confidential clearances. They're going to at least have secret clearances these days. Maybe back in 50 years ago, there might have been somebody with a low-level person working with just confidential information. Well, the thing is now, if you're going to be working in a classified space, you're going to be at least having a secret clearance. The reason why, because most of those offices will have systems operating at the secret level these days. They're not just going to put in something at confidential. Especially if they're working with CyberNet, and CyberNet is a system that is commonly used in both the DoD realm and the IC realm and some other government agencies. And CyberNet is essentially a secured at the secret level. So if you're going to be in that workspace, they want to make sure that everybody's cleared up to that level. That way, it doesn't matter if you don't see any classified information or you're using it every day. They can be comfortable and they can trust everybody in that office can work around that space, work around that, hear the discussions being discussed. Sometimes discussions be at the classified level, or there might be printouts laying on the desk, or there might be, even just having physical access to the systems can cause concern. So that's why usually if you're going to be working in the classified realm, you'd be at least at the secret level these days. The highest level of clearance is top secret. That's the type of security clearance that provides access to information that may cause exceptionally grave damage to national security if disclosed without authorization. And that needs to be reinvestigated every 5 years. Now, sometimes when I say 5 years or 10 years, there might be a little bit of flexibility. Sometimes in the past, there's been backlogs. That's been a point of contention between government agencies in recent years. Like, for example, I had a background investigation at the top secret level. It took me 7 years from the time I put in the paperwork to the time I actually got it back. Why? Because it was after 9/11. There was a huge backlog. The federal government has been continuously trying to work on cutting that backlog down because it prevents people from being able to work on projects. And, they don't, and also too, employers get upset because they can't get people to the jobs and start working if it's taking them way too long to get cleared. So that's been a continuous effort. The responsibility for security clearances, for security background checks, has bounced around between a few different agencies in the last few years. It used to be OPM. There was a major hack of OPM. They changed it over to NBIB a few years ago, National Background Investigation Bureau. In April 2019, it was formally moved over by executive order to an agency now known as the Defense Counterintelligence and Security Agency. They actually run most of the background checks for the federal government. In some cases, we're talking about 95% of all federal background investigations. The process has gotten a lot easier. For the most part, what they do is you have to fill out a form on a system called Equips online. There's some process of what they do to protect your information. You basically go into your background. Where were you born? Where did you live? Where you gone to school? Who you worked for? Um, who your immediate family members are? Where are they located? Where are they from? Um, have you born? Were you born in the U.S.? If you weren't born in the U.S., were you an immigrant and you've been naturalized? It gets into a lot of detail. They'll get into, have you ever had a criminal record? Have you been involved with extremist organizations, stuff like that. And then what will happen is that once your fingerprints and your questionnaire have been sent to the Defense Counterintelligence and Security Agency, they'll have their own field investigators or contract investigators contact former employers, family, friends, and so on. Once they make their determination, they'll have a process called adjudication, where they make the decision, yes or no, and at what level. They'll send the results back to the agency to make the final decision, and then you should find out, okay, you got the clearance granted, and so on, and then access granted, and so on. It's a two-part. You got the clearance, you have your need to know, then you can have access. Okay, now somebody's probably saying, okay, this is a long process. What are some of the easiest ways to get yourself a clearance? Because some people have gotten frustrated over the years of, okay, I'm interested in cybersecurity, but I can't get the clearance. There are some ways. First of all, you can work for the federal government. That's usually part of the hiring process. Another part, especially if you go into the military, most military positions now require some type of clearance. Especially as a military officer, you should have to be clearable to secret. That's how I did it. I'm a retired Navy officer. Once I came on board, I had at least a secret clearance. When I left, I had a clearance at the top secret level. Another thing about top secret level clearances is that they might do some extra investigations, what they call special access programs. There's some programs that they really tighten down on who has access to those, and it might require some more vetting and some more clearance, background checks type things. So just kind of keep that in mind. Another way you can get the process started is work as an intern for an agency. At least maybe they could give you an interim clearance while they're working on your final clearance, or just an interim clearance for a short period of time. You might, if you want to work for a particular agency, you might want to contact that agency and find out how their process works. Because there's a few different ways to do it, and you might want to find out what specifically the agency is looking for, and then proceed that way. So I hope you find this useful. If you want to support more videos like this, please hit the like button and hit subscribe if you're on YouTube, or you become a patron on patreon.com. Here's my page. I look forward to talking to you later. Be safe out there and have an awesome day. Take care.